gas, driving all over the place. And when you operate like we do with no speaking fee, where are we going to get rich at, right? So you have to be inspired. This has to be something that is burning in your bones, crying from your soul. And that will never happen until we're educated to the point where we see where we're supposed to be and where we really are. We've got to get serious. So I'm hoping to get serious today. I'm hoping that we can get together here. Now, I'm not here just to teach you. If I was here just to teach you today, then I wouldn't be a very good teacher. Dan thinks that I'm a good teacher. I'm here to teach you from this day forward, to get you linked in to education. How many of you know our schools are not teaching our Constitution the way they're supposed to? Can I let you in on a little secret? Our schools haven't taught the Constitution the way they're supposed to since 1833. Anybody here born before 1833? I know you feel like it, Gary, but I'm not buying it. So unless you were born before 1833, the education that you've received is tainted at best. And if it's been in the last 50 years, it's probably just simply wrong. So unless you've engaged in your own personal work, you need to re-examine these things. And we want to help you do that. My husband, JC, and I have a podcast, which is also broadcast on terrestrial stations. It is also broadcast on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Samsung TV, where we take current events and we bring them to you in a teaching style and from a constitutional perspective. So, you want to know about the impeachment? We talk about it on the show. Want to talk about red flag laws? We talk about it on the show. Want to talk about executive orders? We talk about them on the show as they come up. How many of you know about the TAPS Act? You'd know if you were watching the show.
Say it again.
TAPS. Like do 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 do, which is probably the proper song for it, but that's not what they meant. The TAPS Act is probably, next to the red flag laws, one of the most threatening to the liberty of America as a whole, as we've seen in legislation ever. The federal government wants to create federal behavioral assessment units managed by your local government, where they have the authority to determine whether they think you are exhibiting concerning behavior, defined to mean, very loosely, are you or have you ever been interested in something that could be interpreted as violent activity? If some agent articulates that, there's no probable cause requirement, that's just articulate that, they now, under this piece of legislation, if passed, have the authority to search and seize all your private property online, digital, red light cameras, compile information, and if that's not bad enough, this legislation then authorizes these agents with no warrant, no probable cause, no jury trial, no nothing, to, quote, manage your behavior. How many of you saw Minority Report with Tom Cruise?
Future crime.
This is a pre-crime unit. And due process is dead if they pass this. And here's the crazy thing. It's not a Democrat bill. It is Republican-sponsored and primarily Republican co-sponsored. Dan Crenshaw, Brian Babin, Matt Gaetz. These people you see on Fox News that are supposed to be the conservative people are all behind this piece of legislation. That's why you'll learn on a radio show, we open up a radio show every single time, reminding you that I am liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over personality. We have to stop looking at people and saying, I'm shocked Dan Crenshaw would do this. Is Dan Crenshaw a human being? Then don't be shocked by anything human beings do. But I don't know if you're a Christian or not, I am. And my Bible tells me that we are to know people by their fruit. Not by their personality, their name, their political association, or their words. You know them by their fruit. So we have to start becoming people who watch fruit. So I want to talk to you today about the right to keep and bear arms. Now, given the crowd that we have here today, I'm sure I don't have to spend a whole lot of time telling you that the right to keep and bear arms is not just about hunting. If your representative, if your attorney general, if your governor, if your sheriff says, I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, I hunt. That should be a fruit for you. A clue that they have no comprehension whatsoever as to what the right to keep and bear arms actually means. Let's just be very clear. I have a huge pet peeve that flips me quicker than anything. When people call it a Second Amendment right. When people refer to it as the Second Amendment gives us. Your right does not come from the Second Amendment. Thing is, how many of you believe that words have power? How many of you believe that what we speak guides and directs our minds? How many of you heard the phrase, if you repeat a lie long enough, soon people will believe it to be true? We keep using terms like Second Amendment right, or the Second Amendment gives, or the Second Amendment protects. We drive our own complacent behavior. Well, why do I have to do anything? The Second Amendment's doing it for me. Right? See how that works? But the Second Amendment exists not to give you a right to keep and bear arms, but the Second Amendment exists because you already have the right to keep and bear arms, and those who were wise in founding America knew that if they didn't put it on paper, we would forget that it was our right and not a privilege. How do they know that? Because they lived through it. They lived through permitting. They had a king that not only issued permits, he issued permits to sell. You had to have a permit from the king in order to sell arms and ammunition in the American colonies. And then when the American colonists started to disagree with the king and parliament, what do you suppose the king did? He didn't revoke permits. He refused to issue them. You see, because revoking a permit would make it clear that he was anti-gun, as we would call it today. But just simply saying, no, you don't qualify, so I can't give you one. Oh, you didn't fill out the paperwork properly, so I can't issue one. Now I'm not anti-gun, I am pro-procedure. We have to have proper procedure, don't we? We have to have clear qualifications, don't we? We can't just hand out permits to everyone, can we? See, this is the danger of permitting, because regardless of what they say, permitting is a permission slip. And when somebody has the authority to give you permission, they also have the authority to deny it. And frankly, when they're in control, what do you have to disagree with? They knew it was a right and not a privilege. They knew what transformed something from a right into a privilege. And so they were very clear. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But Samuel Adams tells us, no people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. Our problem is not who we have in government. Our problem is who we have voting. Our problem is that we don't take the time to vet people anymore. And when we do, we don't ask the right questions. I went to Minneapolis for a gubernatorial meet and greet. It was very interesting because what they did was they had me come up to Minneapolis to teach. I had a room full of at least 400 or 500 people to teach the lesson that I taught in the Capitol on Thursday. And in order to get the politicians to come, they made a meet and greet before the meeting. So they came for the meet and greet, and then they had to stay. So I went around, never telling anybody that I was not a Minnesotan, and was asking questions. And frankly, the right to keep and bear arms are the easiest questions to formulate. Because all you have to do is ask, what is the purpose of the Second Amendment? What does shall not be infringed really mean? And this gubernatorial candidate, I can't remember his name because this was several years ago, gives the typical political answer. He says, oh, well, you know, Kris Ann, this is a meet and greet. I've got lots of people to see. I don't have any time to get into a real constitutional debate with you. I said, no. Don't get me wrong. I'm not looking for a constitutional debate. I just want a dictionary definition. This is not a constitutional debate. Just tell me, why do you think we have the right to keep and bear arms? And it literally took me 5 minutes for him to say, so that we could defend ourselves. And I said, so what does shall not be infringed mean? Well, now we're really getting, no, I said, no, I'm not talking philosophically, I'm talking actual, definition. If I go look this up in the dictionary, what does this mean? Shall not be infringed. Another 5 minutes, and he wouldn't answer the question. You know why? Because they know the answer. And they don't want to be locked into the truth. That's how you vet. Do they answer the questions like that? Or do they hem and haw and hedge and get all political on you? Because if they do, I don't care if they're a great guy, a good Christian, or they were, your neighborhood florist. Don't vote for them. And then if they give you the right answers like that, and they get up there and they vote contrary to that, you've identified a serious character flaw, because either they were lying to you then or they're lying now, which means you cannot retain them. See, that's why Adam said knowledge and virtue. We must have the courage to tell people you have to go home, even if it means the other guy has to win for a little while. You just have to step back, regroup, and get a better one up the next time. So I want to help restore the education, the inspiration for the activation of making sure that our right to keep and bear arms not only shall not, but never will be infringed. The right to keep and bear arms in America, as reminded in our Second Amendment, was not born out of inspiration. It was not something that our founders got together in some pub and invented. As I mentioned before, they already lived through a history, and it was this history that drove them to know that people forget. One of our founders that we're going to hear from a little bit later, named Richard Henry Lee, said, "We must have these things written in a Bill of Rights to be a sentinel for all, a constant visible reminder, especially in those unavoidable intervals of inattentiveness." You see, how many of you know that with socialism always comes poverty? Every time. But liberty always has certain consequences as well. With liberty always comes prosperity. And our founders were not searching for freedom. They were not trying to establish government power. They were trying to create a place where liberty would be secured and endure for future generations. John Adams said, "Liberty must at all hazards be supported." It's liberty that they were looking for. And they knew their plan could succeed. And with the success of liberty always comes prosperity. But with prosperity always comes other certain expressions of human nature. People get pacified in prosperity. They get lazy in luxury. They become complacent and compliant when they get comfortable. And that's what Lee was talking about in those unavoidable intervals of inattentiveness. Thomas Jefferson said it in a different way. He said, "I prefer the tumult of liberty to the peace of servitude." If you are comfortable and peaceful in your government, you are probably not experiencing a moment of liberty. I mean, in our short existence here, how many of you experienced the truth that people in government always want power? They're always striving for more and more power. But you see, the more power we give to those in government, it's a direct relationship. The more power government has, the less liberty the people have. So that's what Jefferson said that. If you want to have more liberty than government, you're going to have to constantly be struggling with those in government to maintain that proper ratio. Amen. And our founders knew that. Even our Supreme Court recognizes that the right to keep and bear arms is well rooted in history. This is District of Columbia v. Heller, where the Supreme Court said that the right to keep and bear handguns is an individual right. Let's be very clear. If our Supreme Court, and this is one thing that I want to sort of make your eyes open to, make you aware of, if the Supreme Court court is ever issuing an opinion that has to do with some aspect of liberty, some aspect of inherent right of the people, they are going to write it so specifically narrow that it only applies in a very limited situation, and quite often only to this particular court case. But if they're destroying your liberty, now all of a sudden it's the law of the land. Did you catch that? Heller said the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in the militia and to use that arm for, quote, for traditionally lawful purposes such as the natural right of resistance and self-preservation. Now, the anti-gun people or the gun control people will tell you what they meant for resistance and self-preservation was robbers and rapists. Only that's not what traditionally lawful purposes dictates. This is the traditionally lawful purpose as created in law that our founders held as colonists in a kingdom. This man is Justice Blackstone. He is the most famous judge in English judiciary, the most conservative, the most of their constitutional of judges. He wrote treaties on common law that our founders used to write our Constitution and develop laws. And here's what he says: to vindicate these rights when actually violated or attacked, the subjects of England are entitled first to the regular administration and free course of justice in the courts of law. Now let's remember, when your rights are violated or attacked, who is he referring to as an attacker? Let's analyze this logically. Do you sue a robber before he robs you? Wait a minute. I know you're pointing a gun at me, but hold on. Let me break out my iPad and e-file my lawsuit before you shoot me. So could he possibly be referring to robbers and rapists here? I just need to know we're all following along here, okay? Next, to the right of petitioning the king and parliament for a redress of grievances. Wait a minute, don't rob me. I'm going to have to go beg the king to change the law to make what you're doing illegal. In this sentence, is he talking about robbers or rapists? No. Lastly, to the right of having and using arms, what are those words? For self-preservation and defense. So if he's not talking about robbers and rapists in situation 1, he's not talking about robbers and rapists in situation 2, then we must know he's not talking about robbers and rapists in situation 3 because he's making a progressional analogy. So let me ask you, and everybody, please, if you're confident in your knowledge,